also makes a point of withholding the names of all but the most senior law enforcement officials. Does this report sufficiently hold accountable the individuals responsible for failures?
So the report is an analysis of what happened at Uvalde, including by everyone at Uvalde, all responding agencies. It concludes that this was a failure of leadership, and so all members of the leadership who failed were identified. It also identifies individual officers by rank and by what agency they're from, but the standard practice of the Justice Department in these critical incident reviews is not to name those who are not listed as at fault, and particularly not to name those in lower ranks who acted on the scene.
Next question.
Mr. Attorney General.
Case at 12.
I have two questions for you, Mr. Attorney General. Your report here names Pete Arredondo and Mario Navarez as leaders in this incident that happened at Robb Elementary. Had they acted in a way that was put out as guidelines after the Columbine shooting, would lives have been saved on May 24th?
I think the report concludes that had the law enforcement agencies followed generally accepted practices in an active shooter situation and gone right after the shooter to stop him, lives would have been saved and people would have survived.
My second question for you, sir, based on this report, we know at this point no criminal charges have been filed against anyone who responded that day. Based on what you all found in this report, should the Uvalde County District Attorney file any criminal charges for the law enforcement officers who responded that day?
Well, I'm going to leave that question for the DA. Just to explain for everyone, the Justice Department only has criminal jurisdiction where federal crime has occurred. The shooter here is dead, and there's no federal criminal jurisdiction. What we've done is responded to the mayor's request, then mayor's request, for a critical incident response examination to determine the manner in which the agencies responded and to provide recommendations for the future, and that's what we've done.
Next question. Tribune. Texas Tribune.
Mr. Attorney General, you identified one of the objectives of this analysis to provide law enforcement agencies with recommendations. There are nearly 300.
Could you talk a little louder?
Which recommendations do you think law enforcement agencies should undertake immediately? What's the most urgent issue?
Yeah, so the most significant failure and therefore the most significant and urgent thing for law enforcement to do is active shooter training, which provides that when an active shooter is in a building or anywhere else, the first priority is to stop that shooter and to remove people who are immediately endangered by that shooter. And that requires tactical training. That's the first thing. Say the second thing is critical incident response. Establishing who's going to be the on-site commander, making clear to all other agencies that that person will be the on-site commander. That again requires training and practice and response.
Quick follow-up to
Last.
that.
Go ahead. One more and then last.
Should joint training be mandated across the country?
I'm not sure what the word mandated here means. I think it's absolutely necessary that in any circumstance where there's going to be more than one agency responding, and that's going to be in any school situation, all the possible agencies should train together in order to establish lines of communication, command structure, and communications structure in particular. Here radios were not interactive. People did not have a way to talk to each other, and make sure that everybody's following the same strategy.
Last question, Uvalde Leader News.
Mr. Attorney General, some have suggested that our police response was typical for mass shooting, in fact even better in many cases. And I use the Pulse nightclub event as a comparison. It took 3 hours to go in and put down that killer. And there were phone calls back and forth. How do you speak to that?
So actually, I'll let Hugh talk specifically about the Pulse nightclub, but I will say that what I've described and what the report describes is clearly the generally accepted response to an active shooter. We did a survey across the country, and the experts who were involved in this examination are experts in exactly this subject of active shooter, And there's no doubt that the standard practice is the one I've described. And I'm going to let you answer that specific question.
I would say honestly, I don't know if that's entirely true. I will tell you this report is comprehensive, it's extensive. I urge you all to read it, the executive summary, all hundreds of pages. I will say there was a epic, complete lack of leadership, unity of command. There was no incident command set up. That's not the case with the Pulse nightclub. And so in this particular one, in comparison, that is not entirely true, and the response was a failure of leadership.